Good morning. My name is Parole Officer Wangertsman. Today is Friday, January 24th, 2025, and this is the Public Act 23-169 hearing of the Connecticut Board of Pardons and Paroles. For the record, Mr. Stanley, the state of Connecticut passed and made effective October 1st, 2023, the Public Act 23-169. It's an act concerning parole eligibility for an individual serving a lengthy sentence for a crime committed before the individual reached the age of 21 and criminal history records erasure. You fall under this act, and this means that you were under the age of 21, that the board shall give great weight to the diminished culpabilities of juveniles as compared to adults, the hallmark features of youth, and any subsequent growth and maturity you displayed while we're reviewing you for suitability today. The following board members are present this morning by stating their names on the record, certifying they have reviewed all statutorily required documents in preparation of this hearing.
Nancy Turner, good morning.
Good morning, Joy Chance.
Good morning, Panamumber Rodriguez.
Also present this morning, we have Attorney Arnold Amore. Attorney Amore, can you please state your name, your juris number, and your business address for the record?
Yes, and good morning to the panel. My name is Arnold Amore, last name spelled A-M-O-R-E. I'm an assistant public defender with the Connecticut Innocence Project Post-Conviction Unit. My business address is 55 Farmington Avenue, 8th floor, Hartford, Connecticut, 06105, and my juris number is 440578.
Thank you very much. Also present this morning, we have State's Attorney John Doyle. Attorney Doyle, you can also please do the same and state your name, juris number, and business address for the record.
Yes, please. And good morning to the board. John Doyle, 235 Church Street, New Haven, Connecticut, from the Office of the State's Attorney in New Haven. My juris number is 415543. And thank you and good morning.
Thank you. Also present this morning, we have Office of Victim Services Representative Ms. Vasquez. Mr. Stanley, can you please state your name and inmate number for the record?
Kevin Stanley, 157568.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 14, Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1-200, which applies to this procedure. Mr. Stanley, if you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time. Again, this is a public hearing. Mr. Stanley, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
And are you willing to proceed with the hearing at this time?
She asked if you're willing to proceed with the hearing.
Yes.
Thank you. As previously stated, this is a Public Act 23-169 hearing. It's being conducted in consideration of a parole application for Kevin Stanley, inmate number 157568. Mr. Stanley is serving a sentence of 61 years flat, with no probation to follow, for murder, carrying a pistol without a permit, and assault in the second degree. There is victim input in this case. There is also an offender accountability plan in place. It has been reviewed and shows that he has completed alternatives to violence, both basic and advanced, voices, along with life skills courses regarding domestic violence, parenting, anger management, offender corrections, personal response, cognitive awareness, and employment courses. He also reportedly completed the SRG program and currently maintains a job assignment. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls in the moderate range for recidivism. Mr. Stanley, this is now your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole, and you may begin.
On November 7th, 1989, I got into an altercation with Javon Green over a broken car window. On that day, I was 18 years old, and I shot Mr. Green 3 times. I have regret killing Javon Green for the last 35 years. My actions that day were senseless and irresponsible. I would like to apologize to Javon Green's family, friends, and loved ones. It's difficult to come to a grip with the fact that I've taken the life of another human being. My biggest regret is knowing, because of my crime, Javon family members, loved ones will no longer be able to have him at family events. He cannot grow old with his siblings, but most importantly, his mother is no longer able to hug him and tell her son that she loves him whenever she wants to. Carrying that reality for all of these years have been the hardest thing I had to face. No one deserved to experience that pain and hurt. I'm ashamed of my actions. It took a long time for me to gather up enough courage to admit that I am responsible for causing so much pain to everyone affected by my action. There aren't enough words to express the remorse I feel about my actions. When I first entered the parenting system, I was young and without a doubt uneducated, without the toll it would take on not just my life, but also Jerome Green's family life. I have dealt with years of regret. I made a bad decision and regret that I wasn't more mature and responsible at the time. When I reflect on my actions from the night of that crime, I feel ashamed. I embarrassed my family and community by taking another human being's life. I made an ignorant, impulsive, immature decision to use violence as a means of settling a dispute instead of communicating like a mature person with a daughter on the way. My crime destroyed two families. As a result of this experience, I am sincerely remorseful. I can't change the past, but I can change the future by what I've learned throughout the years and what I do today. I've been looking back at all the major decisions of my life and now have some insight as to why I always went the wrong way. Even the decisions that appeared to have been right were made for the wrong reasons. I grew up with two sisters and one brother in the city project in New Haven. That was a dog-eat-dog world. I was living my life like a lot of teenagers in felon communities. I was living on a day-to-day basis, hustling, selling drugs, carrying guns without a permit, fighting all the time, and carrying on in life without a cause or purpose. No world existed outside of the environment where I lived. There were no hopes of a better future. There were no great memories of yesterday. There was only living with survival of the fittest as an everyday mentality. I was out of tune at this stage of my lifestyle that so many in my community have been living. I had no idea of there ever being alternatives that I could choose from. The only thing I seemed to care about was getting a reputation. I had no guidance or anyone to teach me how to be a man. At 19 years old, I was sentenced to 60 years for murder and sent to a hostile prison full of adults who did not care what you were there for or what they could do to help you. Inmates was getting raped, robbed, stabbed. I witnessed an inmate being set on fire in his cell. Excuse me. At that time, I felt like programs couldn't help me or keep me alive, but keeping a shank or razor on me at all times will. If I felt threatened or disrespected by staff or inmate, catching a DR was the results. I've caught 74 tickets in 35 years, from assault, fighting, arson, contraband, assault on staff. Fighting became normal for me. It was the way I gained my respect and defend myself. I was angry all the time. I would be lying if I told you change came easy for me. It took for my oldest son and nephew to get murdered for me to realize that every choice that I made in life affected everyone connected to me. That was enough to make me stop using violence as a means to settle the disputes. I have made strides to become a much stronger and better person than I was 35 years ago. As the years have passed, I have grown and matured. I have gone from a young negative kid into a grown positive individual. To change what I was getting in life, I knew I had to stop what I was doing. I had to go through some personal changes of my own and learn how to use this prison environment to better myself. I had to learn to get along with people from all walks of life, dispute hostile tensions to make situations better for not just myself, but others around me. I had to learn to walk away from conflicts. Change needed to come from within, and for me it did. Change had to be desired and sought after with the understanding that my worst decisions is not what defines me. A program that lasts 8 weeks is a good thing in concept, but it can't address the desire to want to grow past one current state of being. It has to start before any program. It has to be an internal choice, a choice backed by clear action. It should be understood that I also acknowledge the benefits of programs as tools for your life. I am very appreciative for some of the programs in place. While incarcerated, I have completed Voices, ABP Level 1 and 2, the parenting course, anger management, domestic violence, offender correction, personal responsibility, cognitive awareness, the employment course, worked in the kitchen, worked in clothing factory, trash collector, hall janitor, laundry. The two programs with the most impact was Voices and AVP. The Voices program was an eye-opener. Some important information that I learned from this program was the struggle victims go through. I learned to redefine what a victim is and that more people are affected by my crime than what I thought. This program helped me understand that so many people were affected by my actions, starting with Javon Green, who was the direct victim of this murder. Also his family and loved ones, because they suffered the loss of their family member. It also taught me that the people in the community were victims as well, because everyone in the area either heard about what occurred or seen what occurred through the news or newspaper. My crime could have psychological effect just by finding out these things happen so close to their home. It truly showed me that I was involved with causing a lot of people pain. AVP, what I learned from this program is how to manage confrontational situations without emotions or your ego, so that each person can speak freely in order to come to a conclusion where we both understand what the situation is about. It also taught me that when you have good self-esteem and feel secure about yourself, you don't respond to others' anger. People who anger you can't control you. But if you stay relaxed and cool-headed, you are in control. These skills are skills I can apply for the rest of my life. Working taught me how to get along with people from all walks of life. Work ethics, how to be independent, how to save money. Most importantly, how to deal with an angry boss. I started programs so I could better equip myself with different tools to combat any challenge I may face. Also to continue to be a successful person in prison, but more importantly in society. I have learned a lot from the programs I participated in and completed. But more importantly, I learned everything starts with positive thoughts, result in positive attitude, positive action. I also wanted different methods to help someone. What works for me might not work for the next person. So I have options to say, try this instead. I made up my mind years ago that violence isn't the way to solve issues. It's just a momentary release at that moment that causes damage in multiple directions. And sometimes that damage lasts for years. So these programs and the things that I have learned are for me to continue my success, but also make a difference in others. And that can trickle down through the community. As the years have passed, I had a lot of time to think about how I could change my life in order to prevent another teenager from making the same bad decision that I made. A bad decision that caused a lot of unnecessary pain to a family that did not deserve it. Speaking to the young people about this is something that I have learned to do very well, and is an important part of my reformation. I plan to advance my education to include a degree in human service. Example, I will be utilizing programs such as Emerge to gain first-hand experience alongside Roger Johnson, who works at Emerge, because I believe that real-life experience combined with a degree will allow me to enter some doors and sit at some tables with people who have the power to effectuate change in our communities. Not only a few from our neighborhood, but a larger group of our community that need guidance, mentorship, a leader, a father figure, a big brother, someone who looks like them, who really have vested interest in their success. I believe that the youth in our urban communities can and will benefit from the knowledge that I have developed in these last 35 years of incarceration, virtually a lifetime of sitting, talking, eating, working, and associating with both hardened convicts and people who made impulsive decisions that changed people's lives forever. A split-second decision caused the loss of a man's life and caused me to be sentenced to 60 years at 19 years old. I know my experience can help others. If given an opportunity by the board, I know I could be just as productive in the community, engaged, speaking to the younger generation about my experience with the hope on passing on positive knowledge that can potentially help some of those younger individuals change their course of action and act rationally instead of impulsively. I plan to continue to seek speaking engagement next to William Outlaw and Tyrone Whitaker, former inmates that's that is a part of a reentry program called Connecticut VIP, Violence Intuition Program, who are currently involved in the community and agencies who focuses on reducing crime, violence, incarceration, and recidivism. I would also like to share with this board that my family and friends supported me throughout my confinement, for which I am grateful. If I'm granted parole, I'm asking the board to send me to a halfway house in New Haven. I have employment provided for me working at Fab Mechanical, a successful plumber company in New Haven, owned by Henry Smith. I would be an apprentice plumber. This is a good job that pays $38,000 a year. I would be paid to work in the morning and go to school in the afternoon for 4 years. I would then take the state exam to become a journeyman plumber. In closing, I would like to apologize again to Javon Green's family, friends, and loved ones. I can't apologize enough for the pain I caused. Words of apology from me aren't anything if action isn't behind it. Therefore, all I can do is take the second chances given and pay it forward. If I could prevent a young man, a young woman from experience what I've experienced, or another family from experience what Javon's family experienced, I would gladly pay it forward. I can't forget why I began this journey to become a better person. Closing, I would like to thank the Board of Parole for the opportunity to be heard. Most importantly, I would like to thank Dr. Jocelyn Hall and my attorney, Arnold Moore, for their help and time, and my beloved brother, Henry Smith, for his employment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stanley. We're going to move right into questions because we only have 90 minutes for this hearing. We're seeing 3 other people today. So we'll begin with my colleague, Ms. Chance.
So, Mr. Stanley, can you hear me?
I can hear a little, but I got a problem with hearing with my left ear. So I might be asking you over and over what you said.
Doesn't go any further. Just speak up, Ms. Chance.
So, Mr. Stanley, you know, I'm going to do a little quick summary and then ask you a few questions, okay?
Yeah.
So at the time when you committed this offense, you were on supervised release. And you ended up in a confrontation with the victim. Where did you get the gun? And why were you in possession of a gun?
I had possession of a gun.
There's an issue with hearing here. She's asking you where you got the gun and why you're in possession of the gun.
Well, at that time, I got the gun somewhere in the streets. And at that time, I was carrying the gun because of the reputation that I had. I used to always have a gun to protect myself.
But you were just released in the community. Why would you be on community release and have a gun?
Well, at that time, I was released, or the community release, but I guess I wasn't trying to change my course of action then.
Okay, so you met with the victim and you got into an argument with him. What really precipitated you taking out the gun, shooting him, and then walking away?
Well, at that time, I was just more concerned about my younger brother and not the pain that I would be causing to the victim family.
But what was your concern? The victim just wanted to know, to ask your younger brother why he threw the rock at the victim's girlfriend's car.
But at that time, when I seen one little boy throw it over the fence, and I'm on the phone and my brother came running in the laundromat, I felt like my brother was in danger, because the one young boy was already thrown over the fence, the leg was broken. So when my brother was being chased and came to me, I felt the same way, that I felt like my brother was in danger.
What made you think that?
Because I just witnessed him throwing one little boy over the fence, breaking the little boy leg.
You saw the victim doing that?
Yes,
You saw him break another young person's leg?
yes. Gregory McCoy, that was the little boy name.
Okay, so, so you went for many years, before acknowledging what you did. And, it was a very long time. During that period, you had 59 DRs, and in your opening comment, you said you were angry for a very long time.
Yes,
So you filed an habeas with the court because at that time you were still in denial. What did you expect that habeas to do for you?
well, the habeas that I have put in, I put numerous habeas in. I put in ineffective. I put in well, I expected to have relief because I felt like that my trial didn't go. I didn't have a fair trial. So when I put the habeas in, I was expecting them to acknowledge some of the wrong that the courts had did, especially like in my me not having my proper cause hearing in 60 days, having it in 94 days. Some of the things that the lawyer should have objected to, he didn't. And I don't remember.
Why you took it to trial? Did they make was there an offer on the table for you before you went to trial?
Well, when the offer was at the table, I told
What
my
was
lawyer,
it? What was it?
What was the offer?
I think 45 years.
And you did not accept it. Why?
Well, I didn't take the 45 years because I didn't know that the 45 years was for everything. I thought the 45 years at that time for one charge. And I told my lawyer I wanted to think about it. But at the time I was thinking about it, he had already put the paperwork in for me to go to trial.
And you still didn't think at that time that you could have stopped it?
Can't hear you.
You did not think at that time that you could have stopped the trial?
Well, he didn't ever inform me about the trial until after I started picking my juries. Now, when I told him I want to think about it, the next time I seen him from them was 8 months after. I was going to court to pick my juries.
So, again, it took you a very long time before you started making any changes. When did you decide to take responsibility for this shooting? And what was the specific reason?
Well, for one, I got older. And with older
How many
comes,
years did it take you?
huh?
How many years did it take you?
It took me probably when I stopped catching tickets 10 years ago.
Today, how much time have you served?
35 years.
Okay, so for 25, it took you 25 years to take responsibility. Okay, and during that 25 years, you got the 59 DRs. And none of them, after you got all those tickets, none of them said to you, I'm doing something wrong. I need to change what I'm doing. What was it that occurred 10 years ago that made you change your mind?
Well, I knew in order for me to stop what I was getting, I had to stop what I was doing. And also when my nephew and my nephew and my son passed, and I found out they passed because they was following my footsteps, that was enough also to make me change the things that I was doing.
So what happened to them? You said they passed?
Yeah, my son got murdered down south. My nephew got murdered in New Haven.
And so that occurred 10 years ago.
Yes,
So you now decide that you are going to take responsibility. So 10 years ago would have been in what, 2015?
yes,
Okay. So during the last 10 years, okay, you have participated in programs. But before I do the programs with you, I want to ask you about just 2 years ago, you applied for a commutation.
yes,
Okay. So your commutation was denied.
yes.
Have you made any additional efforts during the last 2 years to demonstrate that you would be a suitable candidate today?
This was question. How about?
No, so I'm sorry, I'll repeat the question. Since your commutation was denied, what efforts have you made in the last 2 years to improve yourself?
Well, I haven't caught no tickets. I completed my programs. I've just been continuing to stay on the positive path, do what I have to do to show the board that I'm not that person I was 35 years ago.
Okay, so you in your opening comments, first of all, I just want to go back and say you earned your GED in 1990.
I know I was in the county jail, or because I know when I first came to jail, you had to, if you was under 21, you had to go to school. And I know it was either 90, 91, somewhere between there. 91, I was here. So it had to be between 90 or 89.
Okay, so I just wanted to commend you on that. You also indicated that the 2 programs that caused you to make some changes in your life were the Voices program.
Yes.
Now, when the parole officer interviewed you, you spoke very limited as to what you gained out of Voices. But today, in your opening statement, when you talked about the Voices program, you expand that, you learned about the impact to the victims and the community and the victim's family. And so what I want to ask is, over all this time that you were in there, why didn't it ever occur to you someone died, okay? And it had to take you 25 years. I'm really having difficulty with that, Mr. Stanley, trying to understand why it took you 25 years.
So the only answer to that is that I guess 25 years ago, I was still basically not ready to make that change. And I really don't know.
You also filed for a sentence modification in May of last year.
Covered that.
Yeah.
The commutation.
Oh, yes, it is modification.
Did I ask you about the sentence modification? I asked you about the habeas. And my reason for asking about all these, Mr. Stanley, is because I get the opinion that you were trying to find other means and other resources as opposed to focusing on changing your behavior, acknowledging the heinous crime that you did, and try to improve the quality of your life. And I asked you about those habeas and the commutation, and now the sentence modification, because that was just, as I said, in 2023. And so for me, your concerns seem to be focused on those areas as opposed to, putting the time in terms of really working on yourself. You took anger management, domestic violence, the cognitive awareness, the voices, and the AVP. I also, just want to acknowledge your job assignments for working in the kitchen, the clothing factory, being a hall monitor, and currently working in the laundry room. But what I want to ask is, what about a vocational program? A vocational program.
Vocational program.
Well, the vocational program that I did take is not in my file. I did a vocational program. I did
Commercial cleaning.
Commercial cleaning.
Yeah, I did commercial cleaning back in '98. I don't understand why that's not in my file, and that my vocational score is still a level 4.
Right. But I was thinking there are many other vocational programs that you could have done in the last year that would have really helped you when you go back in the community. So, yes, I saw where you took that, but they offer a series of vocational programs there. And I'm just wondering why you didn't take the opportunity to participate in one of them.
Well, when I got here, to be honest, I just was trying to work. I wasn't thinking about a vocational program, or even when I was at any other jails after I took that one in '98.
But if you were thinking about going back into the community, what kind of job do you think you are going to get? Because you never had a job, and you were basically only selling drugs. And you sold drugs to financially support yourself. And one of the other concerns that I had was, even though you did not use drugs, despite the fact that the PSI said you were drinking beer on a daily basis, which is what you had mentioned in the PSI. I think a tier 2 program, because you were selling drugs, would have been beneficial to you, considering that that's all you ever did. And what that would have done is provide you with some education on the negative impact of selling drugs, not just on the community, but the people that were actually using it. And for me, those were pretty serious things that you were doing to damage the community. And I just think getting some education in what drugs does to people who use and the community would have been helpful to you. So I have no further questions, Madam Chair. Thank you for answering my questions, Mr. Stanley.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My colleague covered a lot of ground, Mr. Stanley, already in this. Can you hear me pretty good now?
Can you hear Mr. Rodriguez?
Who?
Mr. Rodriguez is asking questions. He wants to know if you can hear him.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, well, obviously you're having trouble hearing me because your attorney had to let you know what I was saying. I have very much the same concerns that my colleague has. Here you have an individual who's been there for 25 years, 35 years. It took you up to 2015 to come to the realization that, you had to kind of move on and grow up and mature. And then it took you another bit of time because you went through the commutation and you went through the sentence modification to get to the point where you figured out that you needed to do programming. And that gives me a lot of concern. I'm glad that you got the programming. I'm glad that you took the programming. And I think that's going to be beneficial to you at some point. But, you really waited a long time to be able to begin this rehabilitative start for yourself. And I have a lot of concerns about whether or not you're really ready at this point, because you just got this training stuff, this workshop stuff, to even begin to understand it for yourself. Because for us, we have to be sure that when you come out, you're going to be suitable to come out and that the community is going to be safe. And in your history, it doesn't reflect that, right?
Yes.
When the last time all this happened, you were out of supervision and you bought a gun, right? When you got out, when you were getting unsupervised release just to come out and to go back in the community. So I have a really strong concern about that. I think you're moving in a really good direction and in a positive direction for yourself. And I think that you're going to be able to use, it sounds to me from what your opening statement, that you're going to be able to maybe consider utilizing the skills that you've learned. I don't know whether you're there yet or not. And that kind of still concerns me. And again, we're looking for community safety in this and suitability and whether or not you really have the opportunity to really go through a rehabilitative effort. And then I don't really have a lot of questions, but I think my colleague covered a lot of ground. That's all I really have, Madam Chair. I thank you for listening to me this morning, and I wish you the best of luck.
So, Mr. Stanley, I get it. You came in at age 18 facing a 61-year sentence, and you described yourself as angry all the time. And that was true, because that's the behavior that we saw through the DRs. And it's concerning that you got another conviction 7 years into this sentence for more violence. But you haven't had a DR in 9 years. I understand why you weren't pursuing vocational, because in your mind, you didn't have any prospects of going out. These hearings didn't even evolve until 2023. So it makes sense that once you got your behavior under control, you were holding down a job. And it really sounds clear that you have a very solid work ethic. You talked about managing angry bosses and getting along with others and having tools to deal with the challenges at work. Tell me why you're focused on plumbing.
Well, that's part of my reentry plan, because that's something we also learned when I was taking commercial cleaning, and that's just something that I feel like I'll be good in. And I also have a guaranteed job when this is over.
Yes, I did see that, but so many people that we see in your situation plan to get a commercial driver's license. Some come out and want to be electricians or carpenters. I'm trying to understand why plumbing. But it's a connection to the commercial cleaning work that you did through vocational training.
What was the question?
The question is, why do you want to go into plumbing? Is that a connection to the vocational work that you did in commercial cleaning?
I mean, that's just something that I want to do. That's the work career I want to focus on. And that's what
I understand that. I'm just trying to get at why, but we can move on. I get that you were an angry child, that you had low self-esteem. Talk to me now about how you feel about yourself.
Repeat that again, please.
She asked, if you understand that she had your low self-esteem as a child, she wants to know how you feel about yourself today or now.
Well, I feel that I have good self-esteem today. I feel real secure about myself.
Do you understand what was behind the anger?
Excuse me?
Do you understand what was behind your anger?
Probably, well, what was behind my anger probably was like the abuse coming from my mother and my father.
Do you feel like you've worked through that trauma?
Yes, I have.
What programs helped you with that?
Well, the programs that helped me with that was pretty much domestic violence talked about it, because it talks about how it can be emotional, spiritual, abusive. It kind of helped me where the root of my problem came from. It helped me a little bit.
I imagine it helped you appreciate the impact of domestic violence on children, as you yourself experienced as a child, right?
Yes.
What was your takeaway from SRG? Because you started that when you got the assault second conviction.
What was your takeaway from SRG after you got the assault, a second conviction?
What was the what?
What was your takeaway from SRG after you got the assault second conviction?
What was my takeaway?
Yes. What did you learn?
Oh, well, what I learned from SRG is that even though I got in trouble after that, I really, like, the gang life, that really wasn't my family, the family that I thought they were. They wasn't. I was being used.
All right, sir, I have no more questions. We're going to turn it over to the Office of Victim Services. Ms. Vasquez?
Ms. Vasquez? are you?
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I do have two victims who would like to speak. At this time, I'm going to provide the opportunity to Mr. Hines to unmute yourself by pressing *6, and you are able to begin with your statement. Councilor Anastasio, are you there? Madam Chair, are you okay if I let the other victims speak?
Absolutely.
And then I'm going to call the counselor to see what's going on. Bear with me really quick. Thank you.
Ms. Vasquez, I apologize. At this time, since Mr. Stanley's having a hard time hearing, we can have Officer Williams enter the room. She can turn the volume up on the TV, Madam Chair. if you'd like to
Absolutely. Sure.
that. I'm sorry, Ms.
That'd be
Vasquez.
No, it's okay. That's perfect.
Do
Thank
you
you.
mind grabbing Officer Williams? I think, oh, here she is. Hi, Officer Williams. Are you in? Can you please turn the volume up on the TV? Mr. Stanley's just having difficulty hearing.
So I believe it's on 100%, but I can try to turn on the closed caption.
Okay, yeah, fine, thank you very much.
I'm standing, I'm just gonna slide over the thing. You could just lift your arm, Stanley. There we go. Okay, this will be. Thank you. See, that's already high. Let me see. Do caption. I don't think it's, oh, show live caption. Can you speak?
Yes, can you hear us? And are you seeing anything?
Yeah, it's on, but there's nothing typing.
Okay.
We have been running into that issue where this captions get turned on, but nothing appears.
Yeah, I don't, oh, hold on, let me see if I can do something else. Can you say something?
Yep, how about now? Anything?
No, I'm still not getting anything.
Well, that's okay.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, okay. That's all right. Thank you, Officer Williams. I appreciate your help.
He did have an issue previously, so he does have an issue with this hearing.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Any way to move closer to the TV?
You can keep going.
I'm sorry, Ms. Vasquez. I apologize for that. When you're ready.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to provide the opportunity to Reese Green to read his statement. Mr. Green, you're
Yes.
able to start with your statement. Thank you.
I don't have a statement to read, but I would like to touch bases on his opening statement, which, if you listen to him, it was clearly written not by him. Because when he was asked questions from the panel, he struggled in answering those questions as if his back was against the wall. He said something about another kid when he murdered my brother was thrown over a fence or something of that nature. That is totally untrue. And if you also listen to what he said that at one point his brother came into the laundromat and told him something was going on. And then the next point he said he saw my brother throw some kid over a fence. It can't happen both ways, and that was something that never happened. Life is about choices. He chose that morning when he woke up to get dressed, take his pistol, and tuck it in his waist. He chose to shoot my brother, who was unarmed, posed no threat to him. He also had two other gentlemen with him. So for him to say that he was in some type of fear or something of that nature, it doesn't make any sense. Also, he says that, after 25 years, he started to reflect and somewhat take accountability for his actions. I don't get this. Now, I don't know all these SRGs and these different programs and things of that nature. One of the panelists spoke highly of him getting a GED, but if you listen, he had no choice because of the facility that he was in. He had to go for his GED. This wasn't something he chose to do. These programs and all these things are not things that I felt he wanted to do, and up until the last year and a half, 2 years, now they have these programs that are run by other inmates trying to help inmates get out of jail. This VIP program here, these are other convicts getting money from the government to get other convicts out of jail. He chose to do what he did. Nobody made him do that. And, he spoke on how, since he's been incarcerated, his son and his nephew were both killed and this, that, and the third. I want to touch on one very important thing. My brother was a son, brother, and a single father. And his goal at the time of his death was basically providing for his child. He left his passing left such a impact on my nephew, where my nephew suffered from depression and ultimately took his own life. So when you killed my brother, your actions put into place a downward trend for his son, who ultimately took his own life because he could not no longer deal with the depression that your actions put on him. And now we have all these programs and, we're going to help you get out of jail and we're going to do this. But what have you done to actually prepare yourself if you do get out of prison? If you're paroled back to New Haven, Connecticut. No one ever seems to think about the victims. What happens if you and I, our paths cross in a grocery store or something like that? And I've been speaking out against you for as long as I can. Does that mean I need to be in fear? It's just, I don't understand how this system, goes. If you kill somebody and you're sentenced to whatever, do your time. Your second chance should come at the end of your sentence. You're not remorseful. You're not sorry. You're making excuses. Everything it's your fault. You're the way you are because your parents didn't treat you right or whatever. These are just nothing but excuses. You've never taken accountability for your actions, and now you're trying to play on the system to get yourself out of the situation you put yourself in. And I just hope and pray that, the board of parole, this panel, they see you for what you really are and for who you really are, and, I just, I hope and pray that, do your time, finish your time. Along with me is my brother also. He just wanted to just chime in one quick second, if that's all right.
Go right ahead.
Yes, Rodney Williams. I just want to say this. We're in New Haven right now. 17-year-old kid last month get killed. There need to be consequences behind actions, and we can't feel like people shouldn't go to jail and do the time, because what happens is people keep committing crime knowing that these loopholes are there for them not to get out. When you look at this money that's being donated, what I'm trying to figure out is, like, these guys are trying to get anybody out of jail. The state is funding these programs to get these people out of jail. Why don't they vet each person before they try to get them out of jail? Because the truth is this: everybody don't need to come home. And that's a fact. Everybody don't need to come home. It doesn't matter that you did 35 years. It took him 25 years to realize that he got to go another direction and stop doing what he's doing. Maybe he needs to stay there to mentor some of these young kids that's coming in there that got to do a lot of time and help them not do what he did. He's saying he's coming home to a job. Listen, there are people right in this city right now, no record, young black men right in our community. SAD need to hire them. Why they can't hire them? This long-winded speech that he gave, here's what I'm going to say. I was on the last one. He didn't say too much because I said to myself that I got a conscience. I don't want to go and go against somebody who went in there and changed their ways, that some people deserve a second chance. Last time he didn't say nothing to make me feel that way. But when you look at what he said now, it was long. You know, he read it well, but then when he was questioned about just basic stuff, he was struggling. He was prepped for this, what to say, and then when you caught him with the questions, he didn't have the questions because they didn't do a good job about prepping him for that. And then he's saying how these people who out here, his support team, you need to look at what's really going on in New Haven right now. The support team that they got, they still can't prevent crime from happening in this town. People need to go to jail and stay in jail. And maybe the people who doing the crimes will stop doing it. So please.
So, Mr. Williams, what is your first name?
My first name is Rodney.
Rodney?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you for your input, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to email the counselor really quick to let him know that we are going next with Mr. Hines.
Been going off quite a bit today.
Hello.
Mr. Reese, we can
welcome.
hear you.
What do you guys think? Do you guys feel like he's rehabilitated and they're gonna let him out, or how do you think that they're gonna decide?
Counselor Anastasio and Mr. Hines, this will be your opportunity to unmute by pressing *6 from your phone. Madam Chair and board members, it sounds like he may not be able to log on. I cannot get in contact with his counselor, and he's not pressing *6. I know that when him and I spoke, he was strongly opposed for Mr. Stanley to be let out on parole.
Okay. Thank you for your efforts.
Of course, I don't have more details as far as what he wanted to share, but at least it's on the record that he's opposed to this.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vasquez. At this time, each of the attorneys will be afforded an opportunity to make a statement. We'll begin with State's Attorney Doyle. If you have any statements or comments you would like to make, you may proceed at this time.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to the board for allowing me to address you today. I think the first thing that I want to point out is that the state is in opposition to any early release for Mr. Stanley. I'm not going to go into great detail of all the documents that I do believe that you have, but a couple things I do want to point out. And just in the last few weeks, if you didn't have them already, I forwarded to the parole supervisor the transcript from his sentence mod hearing, as well as the decision by Judge Vitale in May of that hearing. Obviously, this board is aware of the commutation process in which she was denied. You're aware of the underlying offenses. And by what I've heard from the board's questions, I know you're aware of the fact that less than 5 hours after being released from DOC for a robbery offense, the first thing in Mr. Stanley's mind was to go out and get a firearm, which led to the death of Mr. Green. I know that this board has to look under our Public Act statute that's been passed, which, as you know, is now been codified into 54-125A G1 of the Connecticut General Statutes. And that statute outlines, obviously, a lot of the things that the board is supposed to consider when determining whether or not to grant juvenile parole. And a lot of them are mentioned at the beginning of a hearing such as this. But what I would also point out is that what the statute is also indicated is that in these hearings for juvenile parole hearings, when one is under 21 or one is under 18, the statutes are obviously very similar. And what the statutes also do is they refer to the fact that if the board finds that such parole release would be consistent with the factors set forth in subdivisions 1 through 4 inclusive of subsection C of 54-300. So there's two statutes that are in conjunction here, and I believe I've addressed the board on this before. 54-300, and then we'll call it the juvenile parole statute, which is the prerogative of the board. But the 54-300 statute, I think, is very important because it's not only balancing what rehabilitative efforts, what community release would do, what rehabilitative efforts, but it's also in balancing, okay, that this panel needs to look at public safety while holding an offender accountable to the community, that sentencing should reflect the seriousness of offense and be proportional to the harm to victims in the community. Sentencing should have an overriding goal, the reduction of criminal activity, the imposition of just punishment, and the provision of meaningful and effective rehabilitation if appropriate, and that sentences should be fair, just, and equitable while promoting respect for the law. So these statutes work in tandem. I want to thank right out Mr. Green, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Hines for coming and addressing this panel this morning, because if you look at that transcript, all three of them came to a prior hearing and addressed by Judge Vitale just 2 years ago. And they said a lot of the same things. And now in reflective, they've even added a lot more detail. Because like Mr. Williams said there are opportunities for people when they are released to attempt to rehabilitate themselves. There are a lot of programs and offerings. There are, as he indicated, a lot of programs established by ex-offenders with offerings and ideas to defendants, to formerly incarcerated individuals. But I think this board is not so needed to know that sometimes people are serious about that. And sometimes, like Mr. Stanley, they read a script of all the things that they're going to do when they get out, or they proclaim that they're going to do. And then when I go out as a prosecutor, what I found out in the community is the people that they're referencing, and I'm not talking about the ex-offenders, but when we mentioned Project Longevity and we mentioned Project Safe Neighborhoods and a lot of things that my office is involved with, what I come to find out, and a lot of people just request information, they don't follow up. I can't speak to whether Mr. Stanley does or not, but I have a sense that he's in that category. I cannot agree more with Mr. Williams and Mr. Green that this defendant is a little bit over we could talk about math here. It's not my suit. That's why I went to law school. But we're a little bit over half of his sentence, of a 35-year sentence that Judge Ripley imposed for good reason. And that even as recently as 2 years ago, Judge Vitale said this is an appropriate sentence after hearing all the facts and circumstances. And I just want to highlight as well, as the board, as several of the board members have pointed out, for the first 25 years that he was in prison, Mr. Stanley denied anything to do with this. His lawyer was wrong. His defense was wrong. Everybody got it wrong. There's not one or two habeases. By my count, Attorney Amore can correct me, there's at least 8 of claims over the years that I didn't do it, somebody got this wrong. And like Mr. Green said at the beginning, this when he was questioned by the panel about how this occurred and about some other individual getting injured or tossed over a fence, that is nowhere in the record that I have. And I have the complete file, the complete transcripts, the PSI, the arrest report. I have everything documented associated with this case. And that is a first for me. And I think that was a first for them as well. What we have is an individual who number of years back, okay, and Your Honor, you have the exact date, got out of prison, armed himself with a gun, and by all accounts, what we do have is Javon Green coming up from the South, offered a job by several individuals, a very skilled carpenter, coming to New Haven to Connecticut, offered a position to do what we want all young men to do: find a career, find a job, work to support yourself and your family, as Reese Green has done for years, as Mr. Williams has done for years. And as Javon Green was going to do and was in the courtesy of doing, and part of the case, which is interesting as well, is he had picked up a young lady who was his girlfriend at the time, who had to testify at the trial, and was picking her up and had flowers and would go to dinner when somebody threw a rock through his windshield. And when he got out to question and talk about why that happened, this defendant approached him with a gun and shot him to death on a New Haven street corner. There's no excuse for murder. There's no excuse for this kind of behavior. But I do want to point out, because this is not a situation of rival gang members. This is not a situation of drug turf, as you see all the time. This is not a situation, nobody deserves to take the life of another person in any circumstance. But this was a completely innocent person who's only stopping to wonder, why did my car get damaged? And, to quote and to point out what Mr. Williams also brought up, he's absolutely correct. And I think I said this to the board 2 weeks ago. I'm dealing with the fact here in New Haven, I had 2 teenagers killed in a matter of 1 month. I don't know what message we're planning to send, what the criminal justice system is sending out there, but when I have 2 teenagers killed in a little month, and then an individual who at that age, at a very similar age, took the life of another individual, how do we balance that? At what point do we say, not everybody who's under the age of 21, and when we look at the juvenile mind and we look at adolescents' minds, okay, and I know those factors have to be taken account by judges and the parole board, but at what point do we recognize that not every 18, 19, 20-year-old in New Haven is picking up a gun and taking the life of another individual? We're not talking about stolen cars. We're not talking about relatively minor incidents. We're talking about taking the life of another individual. The last time I saw Mr. Green's name before this was when I went to the Memorial Service Park for Victims of Homicide in New Haven, and I saw his name on a brick pathway. And I just remembered I had just gotten done with Mr. Stanley's sentence modification hearing, and now here I'm back with him recognizing, after this time in prison, the only way I'm going to get some consideration getting out is now owning it up to it 10 years, 25 years too late in an attempt to get early release. So the state of Connecticut, the state's attorney's office is in opposition to this hearing. And I thank you very much to the victims for addressing the panel, and the panel allowing me to address as well.
Thank you, Attorney Doyle. At this time, Attorney Amore, if you have any comments or remarks you would like to make, you may do so now.
Yes, and I want to thank the board for their opportunity to speak today. I'd also like to thank Mr. Green, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Hines for coming forward on behalf of the Green family. I did live in New Haven for 18 years, very much part of the community, and community violence is certainly something that this board is aware of and should consider. Just a couple of points on Attorney Doyle. A writ of habeas corpus challenges the representation of counsel and whether or not counsel was effective or ineffective. That is the purpose of the habeas. But more importantly, in the 22-page sentencing transcript that is before the board, and in the pre-sentence investigation that is before the board, there would certainly be mitigating factors that any judge would consider today as to whether or not Mr. Stanley received a fair sentence. And those factors would be under Miller versus Alabama. I'm not going to read those factors to the board. I'm sure the board is well aware of those factors. But I'm also hearing from the board a number of different things that I've heard today. First of all, I can assure the board that Mr. Stanley wrote his entire statement. I do not write anyone's statement, nor does his social worker. So he wrote this. I was only made aware today, 5 minutes before this hearing, that Mr. Stanley has an issue with hearing. And it was apparent to me that the conversations that we had to prepare Mr. Stanley for questions, which we do in every case, he's having a hard time hearing. So that's something I want to try to remedy in the future. Ms. Chance raised a number of questions about additional programming. I believe that she mentioned she believed that Mr. Stanley could benefit from Tier 2. Additionally, from a vocational program, Mr. Stanley has done the work. And that question that was posed by the board was posed by us. Why did it take 25 years for you to see the light? Mr. Stanley does mentor people and young inmates in this correctional facility. He is no longer receiving tickets. He's not a violent person. The juvenile age science does indicate that at a certain age, we tend to see the aggressive behaviors decline, but that does not happen in every case. Some people never learn their lesson. And it did take the death of Mr. Stanley's son and his nephew, and more importantly, him finally realizing all of the pain and trauma he's caused the Green family for him to change his ways. And he has continued to work effectively towards the goal of being paroled and released into the community. There is not a person that I called, and I called everyone who submitted a letter, including Mr. Smith, who has a job waiting for him, who hasn't been called by Mr. Stanley. He is doing the work. He is doing the work towards rehabilitation. And I would like to see him paroled, but if this board has concerns, and again, I am very much aware of the New Haven community, but if it has concerns and has some additional recommendations that they would like to see Mr. Stanley do, so that we could come back here at a future date, perhaps that would be the more appropriate way to go. I'm pleased to tell the board that it's been nearly 10 years. Mr. Stanley's 53, going on 54, all right? To serve his entire sentence would make him 79 years old when he gets out. I don't think that's what the Miller-Graham criteria call for, even though it called for someone the age of 17. So with that, I would like to see, the progress that Mr. Stanley's doing and the work that he's doing to continue. And I do apologize to the board for not having been aware of the hearing issue, which I think really affected his ability to answer questions. And it's unfortunate we could not have been in the same room, and that would have eliminated any of this. So with that, I want to thank the board for the opportunity for today's hearing.
Thank you, Attorney Amore. Madam Chair.
Okay, so at this point in the hearing, we're going to discuss Mr. Stanley's case, and we'll be back to you shortly with our decision. Ms. Chance?
So I'm just going to briefly say, when I mentioned the practice that I thought would have been helpful to Mr. Stanley is because he was selling drugs and he needed a gun. And because the gun was the end result of taking someone's life, which is why I think that was necessary for him to do that. In terms of a vocational program, Yes, I know he did take that particular vocational program, but, and I know he was interested in the plumbing. And I know they have all those programs there that he could have participated in. My primary reason today is it took Mr. Stanley 25 years to decide that he needs to take a different route to change his attitude and behavior. And I do acknowledge that he did get his GED and that he was doing, as his attorney said, that, he was assisting other inmates within the self-help groups. So I acknowledge all of that. But in the end, I do think Mr. Stanley would benefit from some more time in incarceration, and that he really needs to figure out the serious impact of his sale of drugs with a gun to go with that, which is what resulted in the death of the victim today. And I do think during that period, he should focus on a specific vocational program. He mentioned plumbing. There are many aspects of plumbing, some of which is offered at VOC that he can participate in. So for me today, it's a deny, but I would be willing for Mr. Stanley to come back, say, in 3 years. And my reason for the denial are the nature and the injury and for institutional adjustment.
Just to be clear, you were not saying that the victim had anything to do with Mr. Stanley's engagement in drug sales, that he had a gun because he was
selling drugs,
and that had nothing to do with the victim.
Right.
This was a argument in the street over a shattered rear window. Okay, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that was the reason for him having the gun.
Yes, that's what it, yeah,
Right.
Thank you for clarifying that. For me, Madam Chair, I think I shared early on, my concern was that he went 25 years without doing anything. Then came to some realization over the death of his son and the death of his nephew. 10 years, and then within that 10 years, he still didn't really take any programming.
okay.
He really didn't take any programming at that point, but didn't really, instead, went for commutation, which he didn't get, and went for a modification of his sentence, which he also did not get. It was denied as well. And didn't start really taking program until I believe 2023. And for me, it was just, I would have preferred seeing it if he had gotten to epiphany at 10 years, at that point, start taking some programming and start really doing the work that he was doing, that he's currently doing, which I want to acknowledge. He is doing work now and has taken some programming. I want to be able to acknowledge that. But I believe he still needs a little bit more. And I would agree with the tier 2. So I think there was alcohol and marijuana involved early on. I don't know whether, obviously in structured setting, he had many tickets in this as well. I am also a denial today with this case, and also would be willing for a rehear within 3 years to give him more time to utilize what he's learned from his programming while he's there, and just give him that opportunity to maybe work with some more youth while he's there, because he did talk about some mentorship that he was doing, and give him an opportunity to kind of go into the vocational programming and learn some more. So he's that much more prepared, and I would feel much more comfortable in terms of community safety, having been able to see that. So that's kind of where I'm at as well.
Okay, well, I do want to recognize that in the early 90s, Mr. Stanley did get his GED. So he wasn't doing nothing. But as we know, disciplinary issues keep people out of programming. So I think it was a vicious cycle where he was undermining himself with the DRs and keeping himself out of programming. And that's the setup that we had. And then we had the 1995 assault second, which was with a weapon and quite serious as well. So I'd like to see Mr. Stanley consider the New Thinking program as well, and perhaps anger management. I know there were some reference to that in parenting under life skills, but I'm not sure that it is the same as the standalone. So there are programs that he could avail himself of. So we're going to go with 2028 for a read here. January. So in the matter of Kevin Stanley, inmate number 157568, there is a motion to deny parole for the following reasons: the nature and circumstances of your offenses, the injury and impact caused to victims and victims' families, and your poor institutional adjustment. I further move that we will rehear you in January of 2028 and recommend that you not get any disciplinary reports and that you complete additional programming, addiction services, and other positive programming available there in the facility to include vocational. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. So Mr. Stanley will, we weren't able to see our way clear today. We will bring you back in 2028 and encourage you to continue on a positive path and do additional programming.
Thank you, everybody. This concludes the Public Act 169 hearing for Kevin Stanley, case number 57568, and it is 10:70.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Security. Thank you.
I don't know. You probably want to see. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Knock it down to 4, but 3.